Mr. Bottom.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Community Scrutiny, Denbighshire.
On the 1st of July. Can I start with apologies?
Yeah,
Apologies from Councillor Ryan Hughes. That's the only apology I've had so far.
Any other apologies?
Anton will be on his way in a minute.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can we move on? Yeah. Next agenda item number 2 is appointments of vice chairs. Vice chair, sorry, for 21-22. Do we have any nominations, please?
Can I put forward Graham Sims?
Okay, do we have a seconder for Graham Sims?
Yes, I'll second Graham Sims, Irving Parry.
Thank you. Do we have any other nominations for vice chair? Are we, that's all quiet. Are we in agreement that we're all happy for Graham Sims to be vice chair for 21-22? We should have a show of hands, please. Against? One against. Abstained, anybody? No, great. So, Graham, thank you very much. Once again, you've been elected as vice chair, and can I just thank you for the last 4 years service as well. You've been a great asset to the Scrutiny Committee, and I look forward to working with you for the next 12 months. Thank you. Declarations of interest, enter item number 3. Any declarations of interest, please?
I can't see the agenda. I'm waiting for Sharon to send it me, Sharon Price. I haven't got one either because I've got no access to Denbighshire stuff at all. It's not working.
Sharon Price.
Cheryl, I think Kath will send it to you now.
No, so yeah. Thank you. So I can't declare anything still then.
Can I just say that Anton's having trouble with his laptop? iPad, he's not taken his laptop yet, so he's nothing to get on with, so we'll have to give apologies. He's going to still try.
Okay, thank you for that. So any more declarations of sorry, any more declarations of interest, please? Tony, you've got your lights on, but I don't know, we can't hear you. So I'll take it as no declarations of interest. Thank you. I'll move on. Agenda item 5 is the minutes of the previous meeting, and they run from can I just go back to urgent matters? There are no urgent matters, so that's why I skipped it. Sorry, Rhian. So we'll go on to agenda item number 5, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, run from 9 to 18. So anybody got any comments on accuracy? All quiet this morning. Matters arising from the minutes. Any matters arising from the minutes? Could I have a proposal what they are correct?
Can I move as a true record?
Thank you, Brian. Have a second. Irving Parry again. Thank you, Irving Parry. Great. So can we swiftly go on to agenda item 6, which is investigation report on the February 2020 flooding in Denbighshire. And it's we have got Mr. Councillor Brian Jones and Tony Ward and his team. So Brian, let's kick off.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and congratulations, Chair, for another year for you, the ensuing year as the chair of this community scrutiny. So congratulations on that. If it's okay, I'll leave my camera off. That'll save any breaking up of the spiel. So this report this morning is the 9th of February 2020 flood event, section 19 flooding investigation report. So we're just talking about the 2020 February flood event here this morning, not any other events. There is other papers coming along for those events. So basically, this unfortunate day revolved around the storms Claire, Dennis and George. The areas that were affected were St Asaph, Denby, Brookhouse Mill, Llandrillo, Bodlewithin and Llaninnis. Those were the areas that unfortunately were subject to flooding and various water issues, drainage, etc. So the intention of the report, it is a detailed report. There's a lot of information in there. Appreciate listening that some members might not have had access to the report, so we'll have to help them through that this morning. The recommendations that we'll come to in the end, there is one I just want to make a quick reference to, 4.2, where we are going to seek assurances from Natural Resources Wales that they will action what is put in these report details. We are working with them, as most members might know now. We've got this task and finish group that's been put together, and there's been a couple of meetings of that, and there's a number of stakeholders involved in that group. And personally, I've got big hopes for it that they will move forward, work together. Natural Resources Wales, Welsh Water, NFU are on there, other stakeholders, that we can work together, and that group might eventually morph into something more formal, maybe in the next corporate plan, who knows. But that because of climate change and this report we're looking at today, unfortunately, it won't be the last report that we're going to be looking at to do with flood and flood risk management details and investigations, because climate change will dictate it's going to carry on, unfortunately. So we need to do what we can to pull certainly this task and finish group together and move it forward going down the line. So that's my brief introduction, although it's gone on a little bit. One other last point, in Llaninnis, there is some project work going on, which is referenced a little bit in the report there. That's good to see, because again, it's an illustration of stakeholders coming together to look at a potential pilot project there to relieve some of the flood risk events that we saw, flood risk management that we saw back in February and subsequently on other flood events. So that's it from me, Chair. Sorry for the rambling on, and I'll pass it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Tony, would you like to add to that?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Bodadar Paub, thanks, Brian. If I start to break up, please do shout and I'll turn my camera off, if that helps, but I'll leave it on for now if that's okay. Yeah, so as Brian says, this is a Section 19 flood report for the flood events in February 2020. Obviously, there have been further flood events since then, but this is specifically about the February 2020 floods. Section 1.3 of the actual Section 19 report, which is on page 26 of the report pack, highlights when we have a duty to investigate flooding, and why we then need to publish the findings when we do. We have a duty to investigate to the extent that we think it's necessary or appropriate to do so. And obviously, with an event of this scale, we felt it was entirely appropriate and necessary to investigate, hence this report. Most of the flooding from that event actually came from main rivers, and that's the remit of Natural Resources Wales rather than the council. So what we had to do was allow NRW to investigate and produce all of their flooding reports before we were able to write this overarching Section 19 report to bring all of those things together. And this report also covers any flooding issues that occurred due to surface water, which falls into our remit rather than NRW. So this report is really to pull everything together into one place. The report essentially is quite straightforward. It seeks to answer 3 questions in relation to each of the locations that flooded. The first question is, why did the flooding happen? The second question is, how likely is it for that scale of flooding to happen again in that location? And the third question is what improvement actions are needed to ensure that flood risk in the county is appropriately managed in future. So it goes through that format for each of the locations in a fairly straightforward manner, I think. You'll note that most of the actions fall to NRW to progress. As I said before, you know, they're the organisation who have the powers to take action in relation to main rivers. All of those actions are summarised on pages 33 to 35 of the report pack, so they're easy to find. I think the process, just to cover briefly the process following this discussion today, this Section 19 report will go to full council on the 7th of September. So obviously our cover report for that will change, and it will incorporate any recommendations or comments that this scrutiny committee want to include and to go forward to full council. And just to briefly mention, although it's not relevant, you know, it's not relevant for this report, that there will be a Section 19 report for the flooding of January 2021. That's due to come to this committee on the 22nd of October, and will then go on to full council on 7th of December. So that is on the forward work programmes, I believe. In terms of the recommendations, Brian just quickly mentioned them there. The first one is really to ensure that we get updates from Natural Resources Wales on the actions that they're responsible for. NRW won't have an issue with that. We're already talking to them. Obviously, we're always in quite a lot of detailed dialogue with them about these issues. And then the second recommendation is perhaps something for you to consider as a committee, and whether the task and finish group that Brian mentioned, which I know, Chair, you're the chair of as well, whether that's the vehicle for having that discussion and taking that forward with NRW, but obviously that's up for discussion and debate. So I wasn't going to say any more, Chair, although I'm slightly worried that people may not everybody might have had the papers, but I'm going to, Wayne Hope is here as well. He's going to help us answer any questions and add to the debate. So I'll just stop there and throw it back to members, if that's okay.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Tony. Are members confident what they've seen in the papers, or do they want a short adjournment to read the papers? Happy to carry on?
I'm fine to carry on, Chair.
I'm happy to carry on.
Okay. No.
That's my worry. I don't know if I'm here.
Yes, you are in the basic. Yes, you are. I'm sure you.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. Okay then. So we, just as chair of the task and finishing group as well as this group, we have met twice. I do feel that we've started to iron some hostility between the different services. It will take time, but I'm confident what we should get some good response out of the working task and finishing group. It does take time, but I am confident. So should we open it to members? Who wants to kick off? Meirig Lloyd Davis, sorry, Meirig. Na ti ddim yn gai dod nôl at Meirig?
I'm not a member of the committee, but could I come in at the end?
I did
Yes,
put my
you
hand
can.
up, Chair.
Okay, there's a lot of people putting their hands up as well. Sorry.
Can I just make a note? Can I just point out, Chair, there's no facility to actually put your electronic hand up.
There is. Sorry, Steve will just come in and give you, if that's all right, Steve, a bit of a training.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The Zoom client's been updated, and we were all struggling with this. If you have a look at the laptop on the bottom ribbon, there's a reactions tab, a reactions button. If you press that just above in a bar, there's raise hand, and then it goes to lower hand once you want to take it down. Okay, thanks.
But I'll take you now, Rachel, if you want to kick off, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So in the report, it was talking about ways of measuring the river flows, and it was saying, I just wondered if anyone could elaborate, maybe Wayne might be able to answer, as to why the TBR was rejected due to poor quality. as in page 73 on sub-page 17, it talks about severe flood warning and danger to life report. It said during an event, the best way of forecasting the model is high, and it's highly dependent upon receiving good quality data from the rain gauges. And it appears that this one was poor quality. So just wondered if you could explain a bit about that, please.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you for that question. Excellent question. And I don't know the answer to it because that was part of NRW's report. So there are always issues with rain gauges and the quality of the data. So it's down to whether that data can be trusted. And depending on the nature and the scale of the event, sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. So what I think I need to do is go back to NRW with that question to ask them to clarify, because it's not not something that I've been directly involved with in preparing. So that's their report. I think that's probably the best way to take that one forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Wayne.
It is I perceive it as a bit of a black box in terms of interpreting the scale of a flood event based on rain gauge data, and that they are actually moving away from rain gauge data towards radar information, which is far more reliable these days. But they tend to use a combination of methods to determine what the severity of a rainfall event was. But I'll ask them the question, and hopefully they'll be able to give me an answer that I can understand and others can understand as well.
Chair, if I may, I just wonder whether, because as I said, we're going to be taking this report to full council in September, whether if there are any questions like this that we're unable to answer today, that we could include a additional section in the cover report for the council report with the responses to these questions on.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Tony.
Okay, thank you.
Rachel, are you happy?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Thank you.
Could you just put your hand down? I've got Councillor Mervyn Parry, and I've got somebody else with a hand up, and we can't identify who it is. Sorry, could you just announce who it is? Mirig. Yeah. Okay.
I've had to go on my iPad. My laptop wouldn't connect here.
I'm Mirig. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Peter. I'll come to you in a minute. So, right, we've got Councillor Mervyn Parry. Thanks.
Okay.
Just to let you know that I'm also on the task.
Yeah, I can't hear Mary Parry at all.
Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Just to let you know that I'm also on the task and finish group, and I'm pleased because of the problems in my area that I'm on that group, and we're getting some transparency now and co-working. Councillors, the county councillors, the county and National Resource Wales and Cymru. So it's good we're going forward. I'm happy with that. Can I just ask Wayne a question? With the monitoring, is everything that we use as evidence or whatever all from National Resource Wales, or does Denbighshire do any of its own monitoring with its own satellites just to check that the information we're getting you're happy with, and so we can scrutinize some of the work that possibly or the information you're getting through? I'm just wondering whether Denbighshire do anything like that themselves.
We don't at the moment. The only thing we have in terms of gathering data, we have some telemetry at key locations. So we've got some telemetry in Corwin and in Ruthin, but that's more about alerting us to high river levels so that we can react and go and attend to any potential blockages. The collection of data is quite a specialist activity. So NRW are a big enough organisation that they have specialist teams across Wales. They also rely themselves on Met Office data But as part of the natural flood management project, we're looking to install some telemetry on some of the smaller water courses and also some rainfall gauges. It isn't to replace the NRW data. We could never hope to do that. We're just not big enough an organisation to justify the expense of that. But it will all help us to build. It will help us to build a clearer picture of what's happening at a local level.
Chair, can I just ask a question? Could you maybe bring to the report sometime, Wayne, if you bring one to full council, just so maybe if you could give us for people to understand, because we've got climate change now, maybe if there are some data there that they're so good at collecting, to be able to bring us a report on showing rain level gauges or rain level within various parts of Denbighshire over the last 10 or 15 years, because I would imagine that's something they've probably got, just as a point so we can see where our rain level's going. Thank you.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's something that we could bring to the task and finish group. So, I could ask them to put a presentation together, maybe just, 20 minutes, half an hour. There's a lot of expertise out there, and they'd be keen to explain to us what the local situation is.
I think it'd be good to see those figures so that people can understand what possibly, if the climate change is there, what it's doing and how it's affecting us and how quickly it's affecting us. So thanks for that, Wayne.
Okay.
Just Wayne, just to add to that, really, do you have up-to-date access to the information from the NRW? Obviously, you're responsible for flooding in Denbighshire, so it would be apparent that you have it. Do you have it?
Yeah, there's a whole host of data that we have access to. The question is, what would we do with it? So in terms of interpreting the data, what does it mean? We don't really. We have the council has a remit to understand flood risk within the county, but we have to rely on others regarding the detail of that. So flood risk from main rivers, very much a matter for NRW, and we have to decide what's the benefit of understanding that data to the nth degree of detail. What would it help us to achieve in terms of managing and hopefully reducing flood risk? So we tend to, I tend to look at the data after a flood to see whether there's a pattern that developed during the flood event. But in terms of the a deeper analysis of what the data means, then I currently don't do that, and I find it a little bit difficult to justify in terms of what the benefits would be.
Okay, thank you, Wayne. I think with the task and finishing group, it's prevention instead of cure, so that's what we're heading for, hopefully. Peter Scott, please, and if there's nobody else, we'll go to Meirik, but we'll see. Peter Scott, thank you.
Okay, yeah. I didn't get in right at the very start, so unfortunately I don't know how deep we're going, but it would appear to me that we need to have NRW present, because most of the information is NRW. I'm looking at, I've got it on my iPad now, the flood investigation report, and they've highlighted several areas of the LV that flooded in St Asaph, and just need to know if these areas are going to be repaired or remedial work there, so those are the people we need to be talking to. It's their report. I think it's Appendix 2. I think pages 36 to 40. It's St Asaph. It's the only area I know of the LV. The other part of the Clissovel, in working with Denbighshire, we have managed to get the old people's homes with new flood protection for the air bricks and the doors. So that's helped with Denbighshire. But just feel we need to talk more with NRW. I know we do that with the task and finish groups, which I'm also a member of, but there's a lot of work here for NRW who we need to be scrutinising rather than Denbighshire, who monitor what NRW are doing. That's just my points of view, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian or Tony, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, Chair. I was just going to say that obviously, as I said at the start, most of these actions identified in the report are for NRW to take forward. That is correct. It's really important for us to understand how and when they plan to go about doing that. and for us to, regularly ask NRW for updates on where they are with delivery on them. And obviously, although NRW are never obliged to come to things like scrutiny committees, they are usually quite happy to do so if they're invited to come along. And obviously they are taking part in the task and finish group as well, quite willingly, and they're contributing very proactively to that. So I think, as I say, recommendation 1, we need to make sure that those recommendations are taken forward, those actions are delivered. So we need to agree how we will go about monitoring that and keeping the committee informed of progress, really, to make sure that you're satisfied.
Okay, Peter, happy?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, we just need to monitor NRW. As I totally agree with Tony, but there is work that has been highlighted that needs repairing before next winter turns up, because it seems to be an event every winter now with this climate change.
Brian's got his hand up. Brian, do you want to come back on that subject?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Tony, hang on, I'll just switch my camera off. So Tony's probably answered it there, but I'm pretty confident Natural Resources Wales would be happy to engage with us. We could, in fact, invite them to the next flood section 19 report meeting, which Tony's just alluded to before. I'm sure they'd come to that, and I'm sure there's a mechanism that the committee can put into the recommendation at the end of this meeting to get NRW more involved, because they want to be involved. You know that from the task and finish group meetings that you've had, and we need to nurture the relationship, build it up, and everyone will benefit long term. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, Chair, if you don't mind, I'll just say, yeah, Brian, I think you're right. I mean, again, like the other question before that Rachel posed, we could obviously ask NRW for an update on kind of timescales or their intentions in relation to these actions, include that in the report that goes to full council. And if members deem it's appropriate, we could invite NRW to that full council meeting.
Thank you, Tony. Brian, can you turn put your hand down, please? Rachel, you put your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So in the report, it talks about NRW communicating with the residents who are in areas where the risk is deemed low of flooding or have flooded previously. So I was just really going to ask Denbighshire what our plan going forward is to communicate with those residents in those areas that aren't deemed to be, where the flood defence schemes aren't deemed appropriate. That was one thing. An observation about the photos, it's in the recommendations, and I was just surprised as to why the photographs aren't already dated. That seemed a bit strange. And yeah, and also this thing about they seem to deem these areas that are flooded, the one in, they said, they used to say 1 in 100 years or 1 in 200 years, but now it seems to be just 1 in 100. So it was really just curious about how they've changed that measurement, and is it still in years, because it doesn't say years anymore. And they deem it to be low risk, which I find strange, considering year upon year it seems to have got worse. So yeah, just these questions again, I suppose, for NRW, but the main one is for Denbighshire to answer, please.
Thank you, Rachel. Could you just put your hand down, please? Cynghorydd Mary Gloyd Davies, o hynna.
Councillor Mary Gloyd Davies. Thank you, Chair. You can hear me, can you?
Wel, mae o'n adroddiad cynhwysfawr, yn dydi?
It's a very comprehensive report, but if I may draw your attention to page 69, it shows laundry cottage St Asaph. Well, that should be Pont Serallt Goch. That's one. It's a good plan on page 76, showing how many floods have happened in my patch in Trefnant and Cefnmeriadog. And then there are other parts as well later on where it's very good. But the problem is that nobody is doing anything to assist the people who have had their houses flooded from St Asaph up towards Pontyddol. Everyone is talking about this and spending money in some areas, but they're doing nothing to assist the individual houses or the individual farms. I think somebody needs to answer the phone as well somewhere. So I just wanted to know why that isn't happening. Llanarafon, which isn't far from Pont-yr-Argoch, have offered to meet Wayne. I don't know whether he's been there yet, but nobody has informed me for me to be there or to be with the Llanarafon residents. They have got an idea as to how to improve the flow of the river, but I haven't heard anything from anybody. Wayne did promise last time we discussed this kind of issue, but nothing has happened. I can hear you all saying that you're on the working group. I've also been affected by floods, but I'm not on that working group. I think we need people to take more care. People who don't live in towns and cities. I don't know whether Denbighshire can do anything to help the ratepayers there. Thank you, Chair. I'll answer one. The choice out of mags is who is on the working group, and we've chosen from the local mags. Okay, that's fair enough, Chair. I accept that. But you were only allowed to choose one, weren't you? Not the people who were affected.
Wayne, could you pick at that, please? You still there, Wayne?
Sorry, yeah, could you just
Could you pick out what Mairead the questions Mairead put to you about me?
Yes, the location that Mairead referred to is it's a main river flood risk, so it's clearly Natural Resources Wales remit there, and the council doesn't really have a role to play, other than it's somebody that's been affected in our community. But in terms of the solution to the problem, even if we wanted to carry out work there, we don't have any remit to. So the right people are involved in the discussions there. In other words, Natural Resources Wales. I provided assistance as best I could to the residents in question.
Wayne, Graham Bowes wants to come in. I don't know if you want to just give Graham allow Graham to come in. Graham Bowes, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, sure.
Oh well, yeah, Chair, I'm happy for Wayne to finish, and I'll come in at the end after Wayne's finished his explanation. If that's all right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Wayne.
Yeah, so I pointed the resident in the direction of a couple of consultants that they could seek some independent advice from, and then they've had the residents had discussions with a consultant, and also Natural Resources Wales have been back and they've had meetings on site. So I think that's probably as far as I could have gone, and the council could have gone in terms of assisting that particular resident. But it's we have to be a little bit careful that we don't get drawn into things where we've even no remits, and or we can't actually do anything to assist. Yeah, I've spent some time getting involved in that particular problem.
Eric, you done all.
If I could just come back in, and thanks to Wayne for that report, but it would have been helpful, wouldn't it? And it would have saved a lot of trouble if he would have written to me, informing me exactly what he's told you as a committee. I would know there where I stood with the Llanarafon family, but I'm in the dark here. And thanks to Wayne for the report. Fair enough, I accept his report. But if I could get it in writing, please, so that we can put it on record for the future.
Okay, diolch, Mairead. I've got 3 speakers, but I'm going to bring Graham Timms in first before I come to Graham Bowes and then Brian.
Excuse me, Chair, my questions weren't answered.
Oh, I do apologise. Can you just repeat your questions again? Sorry.
The officers, did you make notes? The officers. It was about the talk in the report about the residents, the areas deemed that the areas in the report that weren't deemed worthy of having flood defences. And it was talking. The report talked about NRW's communication with Denbighshire. Communication with the residents. But I was asking what Denbighire's plan of communication with those residents about future flood defence for their homes.
Yeah. It's similar to my response to Merrick, Rachel, that we don't have any remit or jurisdiction for flooding from main rivers. If it was an ordinary watercourse flood, then we'd be, getting stuck in there and communicating with residents and trying to help them out, and maybe implementing a scheme, which is what we've done across the county, and continue to do so. But it is unfortunate, and it's something that arguably could have been sorted out about 10 years ago with the Flood and Water Management Act, where the responsibilities for flooding could have been brought together under one organisation, but it isn't. So we have to allow NRW to do their bit and do their communication with residents, and we deal with surface water and ordinary watercourses. But in terms of the assessment of risk, the terminology is confusing, and Natural Resources Wales used to use terms like 1 in 100 year. What they actually mean is that for any flood, there's a certain probability of it happening in any one year. So they call it a 1 in 100 annual exceedance probability, and it's based on statistical analysis, and it doesn't really mean anything. So, well, it does if you're a statistician, and it helps you to compare one flood event with another.
Wayne, but in terms of this report, so I just come back in.
Yeah.
I remember when the guy explained it to us in one of the meetings before about how it was all worked out. But
yeah.
what I'm trying to gauge is that this report it determines whether it's a low risk or whether it's a high risk. And in a lot of instances, they're saying 1 in 100, possibly 1 in 200, but they're not saying years anymore, and it's deemed as low. So that if somebody reading that in a lay terms was reading it, they'd interpret that as, oh, there's not much chance of us having another flood here. So what I'm trying to communicate is that it's sending out a wrong message. Unless we fully understand, or the public fully understand what this means, then they don't really understand the risk to their home.
I agree, but it's not the council's terminology, although we end up using it anyway, because how else can you describe risk? If you've got a 1 in 100 annual chance of flooding, then that is statistically low risk, because there are locations around Wales where there's people have got a 1 in 5 chance every year. So it's all about comparing risk. We also, one thing that we stress to people who have benefited from flood defence schemes is that they're still at risk. If they're near a river, then there's always a chance that there'll be a rainfall event that's so huge that they'll flood, but their risk is very, very low. But I agree, and it's something that I've had discussions over the years with NRW and with Welsh Government about how the risk that somebody faces is explained or expressed, and it's the fact that we haven't improved on what we've got now suggests that there's no better way. But it's really important that NRW, so that they have community flood groups in places where the risk is relatively higher, and they do a lot of work in terms of informing people what the risk is, but there needs to be a continuous momentum with that, and that's something that we can take back to them, is that as new generations come along, they won't necessarily get the same message that previous generations had about what the risk is in their community, so that they need to carry on investing in that awareness raising activity.
Happy, Rachel? I'm sure if you feed to Peter Scott, he could come to the Task and Finishing Group through Peter, sorry, and ask that question and get some answers. I'm sure Peter would be happy to do that. Happy, Rachel?
Chair, I'm already on that committee.
Oh, there we are. Then. So, question next time. Right, Graham, Timms, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, my question is related to what Rachel was asking as well, and Wayne has partly answered it, but Brian mentioned in his first introduction about climate change. Obviously, that's going to be a major factor in how risks are assessed and so on in the future. And I was going to refer to the 1 in 100, 1 in 200 as well. And I just wonder if you've got any indication for us as to how these numbers have changed recently due to the onset of more flooding due to climate change. So, for example, say somewhere 10 years ago was in a 1 in 200. Have all these figures gone down, and now it's 1 in 100 or 1 in 180? You know, how much are these figures actually changing? Thanks.
Shall I answer that?
Please.
Chair?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So there's no clear indication that climate change is having a significant effect, and these things tend to come in phases over decades. So within a period, you might have more floods, so more frequent floods and worse floods, but then it might revert to, over maybe a 150 year time frame, it might revert to a period that's fairly quiet in terms of flooding. The rainfall data is limited in terms of how far it goes back. And I think you'd have to, if you had 10 climatologists in a room together and asked them this question, they wouldn't all come to the same conclusion. I think the jury's still out regarding the, whether climate change is affecting flows in watercourses to the extent that flooding is going to happen or is happening more often and is going to carry on happening more often, because it does, these things ebb and flow over decades.
Yeah.
Thanks. What's considered an appropriate 1 in 200, 1 in 100 for, say, a housing estate? Does it vary according to the type of estate, number of houses, and that sort of thing? And what's the sort of general rule that you're aiming for?
Well, with new developments, there's a planning policy framework that includes a technical advice note called TAN 15, which is about development in flood risk. And that looks to achieve a standard of protection. In other words, if you build a development, that it has to be able to be dry in a 1 in 1,000 year event. That's a kind of rule of thumb approach. But it is only guidance. But that's in Denbighshire. We, through the planning process, I can't think of any developments that have taken place where the risk has been more significant than 1 in 1,000 years, or 1 in 1,000 annual exceedance probability.
So just come back up again. What about current housing?
Current housing, there's no national standard in terms of what protection existing houses and businesses can expect to benefit from. It only comes into play really when you build a new scheme. So new schemes, the target standard of protection is against a 1 in 100 year flood with an allowance for climate change. But there'll be properties all over the county that are at greater risk from that. The other thing that needs to be taken into account as well is the risk of blockage. So it's all well and good having capacity in a river system to deal with a 1 in 100 year flood, but if you have a blockage at a bridge or a culvert, then that becomes almost meaningless.
Thank you. Okay, can we go back to Graham Bowes now, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just taking myself off mute. Just comments on this general discussion, which I think is of interest. The first thing is just to cover what Wayne said there. There's two different ways of looking at flooding. One is the protection of existing communities, and then the other one is which is a different kind of standard, is how you view new development, and those two things aren't the same thing. So when you're thinking about flooding, a lot of this report that's in front of you today is about existing communities that are in risk of flooding or in danger of flooding or have indeed flooded. It's a very different discussion when you start to look at proposals and plans for new development and the assessment that is. So you need to just, when you're having these discussions, try and think about it in that way. Existing communities and new development through the planning process. And they are kind of different standards, just bear that in mind. The other thing that we've talked about today is kind of risk, and I think that's important. In terms of existing communities, what is the risk of flooding, be it from sea overtopping or be it from river? And this report is predominantly around river because that's what the flooding incidents were in February of last year. Now, you start to look at risk, and then you start to look at what's the technical mitigation to help address that risk or to alleviate that risk. And of course, that doesn't, you'd have to look at a whole set of things there around what the mitigation is, whether it's physically possible, what's the cost, etc. So in some communities, e.g. Fairbourne in Gwynedd, the view has been taken, it won't be defended. So that's a view that they've reached, that a community will not be defended from flooding. There is no mitigation going to happen there. That community is going to flood over time. And that's a decision that's consciously been taken by the local authority. So that's of interest because you can't always mitigate against the flooding. The other issues then are, do we have clear priorities around places that we think we can defend through mitigation? Are we clear around what those priorities are in terms of our communities? I'm not 100% certain we are, if I was being honest, around what is our, where do we think we could mitigate? Where can we afford it? What's the priority list? And that's something of interest for us as well. But don't forget, whatever mitigation is put in place won't remove the risk. It might impact the risk, but it will not remove it. And the final thing to say is I wanted to come in on, Chair, was the question that Councillor Mayrick raised. And that needs exploring, because he said, how do we help the individuals affected by flooding? What do we mean by that? What do we think the council's role is? Are we talking about mitigation? Are we talking about explaining to them what they should be doing to mitigate it themselves? Or are we talking about the recovery immediately after a flood, where the flood has happened and there's damage to the property? What is the council's role, if any, in that? So I think there's a number of issues that over time we've got to continue to explore in flooding, and this is part of the tip of the iceberg, if I can use that comment, in this report. Okay. In this report, to get this discussion going. And the reason it's become really live, final point, Chair, and I thank you for indulging me. The final point is, of course, there used to be rather sporadic events that were separated by significant timescales between one flood and another in Denbighshire. So it was never really a big issue until that flood happened, and then we thought there's something we need to do. But now what we're learning is they seem to be far more regular, if not annual events. So we need a completely different approach and a completely different mindset to flooding. Whereas perhaps before there was a flood, there was a response, and then 5, 6, 7 years would go by, councillors changed, officers changed, and the issue was we responded to the next flood that might have been 7 or 8 years after the last one. This is a continuum now, and we need a completely different mindset and a different approach. Thank you for indulging me, Chair. That may result in more discussion. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Brian, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was a bit worried there by some of Mr. Bowes' comments. He sounded at one point, he was suggesting we should let rail flood and the boundaries back to Riddling, like, you know, start to panic a bit, but there we go. But it leads in nice to my comment, and it just alludes back to what I said before. The task and finish group, members that are on this committee this morning that are a member of that, and any other members can take any concerns to that task and finish group. Certainly Merrick's point that he raised, but if I can make the point again, the task and finish group for the rest of the run of this council, it needs to morph into something into the next council, and if that's by way of a corporate priority, that we really recognise this issue of flood and flood risk management, and we're going to get communities involved to deal with it, and it's all integrated in to some sort of new board. I believe that that's what needs to happen from that task and finish group, that you've got something that will sit on 10 foot of concrete in the next council to deal with what, unfortunately, is inevitable. We will be dealing with flood events, but there's a lot we can do, working with communities, working with the stakeholders, Natural Resources Wales, Westwater, Welsh Government. You'll all be aware they've appointed a climate change minister. They've also appointed a deputy climate change minister. They're taking it seriously. We should be proactive here in Denbighshire and try and lead the way like we have done on the climate change strategy. We've definitely been ahead of the game on that, and we've been recognised for that outside the county. So we need to do that on the flood risk elements, that the problems that we're facing. And I see that vehicle as the task and finish group to move us to a body, whatever you want to call it, that in the next council, it will be picking up on these issues. It'll be dealing with individual residents that have got problems, to drill down on it, to make sure that we can do everything possible to protect as many people as we can. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Any comments on the back of that, both speakers? Okay, no more speakers. Oh, sorry, Mary Clyde Davis.
Just to thank Graham, the officer, for his statement. I'm glad that he's willing to help us. I accept that it isn't the County Council's fault in many of the issues that I was raising, but I think it's time for us to put pressure, very heavy pressure, on National NRW, because they let the individuals drown, if you like, and not at all concerned about them.
Diolch, Mary. My mind's gone blank. Brian Blakely, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just go back to what Graham was saying before? I think Graham put it over very, very well indeed. A little bit concerned on what Wayne is saying there. We're talking about the amount of rainfall we've got, as Graham mentioned, 1, 200, 100. With all the storms we're getting lately, and I don't remember these storms when I was younger, we seem to be getting 3 or 4 storms a year. And with these storms, we get very, very heavy rain, which are filling our contributors up and our waterways up very, very fast, which is causing a problem. I do remember going back some 10 years ago, and I'm sure Graham was at the scrutiny with us when we had the Welsh Water Board and NRW along to talk about our sea defences. And at that time, we were told that there was no way we were going to stop the water coming in and getting through our sea defences. We were shown maps then, as we're being shown maps at this moment in time, of what's going to happen in 30, 40, 50 years' time with the sea level rising, which is causing flooding. With the sea level rising, is a major problem, but with the amount of rainfall we're getting as well, that's coming into the Elway and the Clwyd, and maybe when we've got a high tide with extra flooding and extra water coming down our waterways, when it hits that high tide, there's no way of stopping the water backing up and flooding. And it does worry me because, of course, in Rhyl, we have most of our properties built on the floodplain, and we're still building on the floodplain. And our residents are still complaining that they're being refused insurance on their properties, as Zurich refused some years ago to a lot of residents on the Wellmar estate. Are we just going to be able to sit back? I know we're talking about, and I understand that we've got a working group, and for the life of me, I hope that it does work, and I hope that we can get across to National Resource Wales that there is a major problem. Again, we've got the real cut or the prestating gutter, whatever you call it, that again is causing problems with the banks falling in, back gardens going into there at this moment in time. It's gradually getting worse with the more amount of rain. It does concern me and it concerns our residents. And I'm hoping at the end of the day, with this working group, that we do get National Resource Wales to listen and to actually do something about it, because every time we've spoken to them, and I've had meetings in the past with our with Anne Jones when she was our AM, and we got nowhere. I'm hoping now that we are going to be able to get somewhere, because things are not going to get any better. They're only get worse. And I know what said before regarding global warming or whatever, it is a threat and it's not going to get any better. If you look at Canada, now people are dying with the heat waves over there, and it's all caused by global warming. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there was any questions, just more of a statements. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Before we hand over to Graham Timms to do the recommendations, I've just got some concerns at the moment on 3.2, Graham, that, you know, until we've finished this task and finishing group, I don't sit comfortable with asking for assurance that the Natural Resources Wales are looking at managing it properly. I don't feel comfortable in, I know we're asking them, but at the moment, I've got no confidence at the moment. So, but it's early days in the meeting. So, Graham, can I hand you over?
Thanks, Chair. There are two recommendations there, and Hugh's already had to say on one of them. But the two recommendations are both for seeking assurances from Natural Resources Wales. The first one, that the recommendations identified in their flood investigation report will be carried out, and for anticipated timescales to be confirmed. And the second one, that they will, that we're seeking assurances from them that flood risk from main rivers in Denbighshire is appropriately managed. And I think we've probably still got to come back on them if they say yes, it is, and the task and finish group has another point of view. They're the two recommendations.
Thank you. Can we have a proposer and a seconder, please?
I'll propose.
So,
Chair, if I may, sorry, I can't seem to find where I'm supposed to put my electronic hand up. It doesn't seem to be there on my laptop. With that second one, is that something that you're proposing gets explored in more detail via the task and finish group?
Yeah, I think that's how we're all doing, isn't it? That's what the task and finishing group is doing. So, Peter, have you got any recommendations, any more changes to the wording on that?
Well, yeah, and that's 3.2, Chair. If we just add that flood risk from main road in Denbighshire has been appropriately managed, and the Denbighshire task and finish group monitor what National Resources Wales or keep an eye on. I don't know very good what the word would be, Chair, but the task and finish group would link into what Natural Resources Wales are doing, so we can tell them what we want. It's a long-winded, but that's not right. We need Gary Williams to tell them what to say. But I totally agree with you, Chair. The task and fish group should be monitoring what Natural Resources Wales are doing.
Why don't we say 3.1 first? Are we all agreements of 3.1?
Yeah.
Tina, first. Can I have a seconder on that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter. Yeah. Okay. So we've taken that. So that's passed. On 3.2, we don't sit comfortable with the wording, and we'd like the task and finishing group to feedback more. Anybody help me here, Graham? Yeah.
Can I suggest that we add in some words in that?
Can't hear you, Mervyn.
No.
Can people hear me now?
Yeah, turn the camera on.
Can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, yes.
I'm just thinking in that 3.2, because the council seeks assurance from Natural Resource Wales that the flood risk for the main rivers in Denbighshire are being appropriately managed. Well, we're working with them with the task and finishing group. So this isn't an end thing really, but I think, you know, the work that we're doing with the task and finishing group will come back and affect that one anyway. So I don't see that refusing that one or going against it. It's just that we are working with them through the task and finishing. So I don't think that the wording is really wrong.
Okay, can we just bring Rian? Rian wants to come in for it.
Yeah, I was thinking along the lines of that the council, through the task and finish group, seeks assurances from Natural Resources Wales that flood risk from main rivers in Denbighshire is being appropriately managed.
With
So
ongoing, yeah.
And just on a note of caution as well on the task and finish group, that has got a very defined remit. So mention was made earlier that, you know, it might for the next council turn into some kind of board. I think the task and finish group needs to finish its work, and if anything needs to go forward to the next council, I think that will be a separate decision.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're happy to go with that. Can we have a proposer?
Propose that, Chair, now.
And a second of Peter, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody happy with that? Thank you very much. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Tony, for that. It was an interesting conversation with a lot of ongoing work. So,
yeah,
thank you. Can I go on to the next agenda item, which is number 7? And we have Tony Thomas and Liz Greaves, and the author is Jeff Davis. Tony, do you want to kick off if you're there?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Congratulations on your appointments again. Okay, so we're here today about this STAR survey, which is sent out to all our council house tenants every 2 years. So the idea is to retain tenants' views about homes and neighbourhoods. So we got 3,300 nearly sent out, 380 replies, roughly about 11% of our tenants. It's a requirement now for all councils and RSLs to do this every 2 years. Welsh Government has cited Denbighshire as good practice. Overall rates are lower satisfaction than previously in 2019, but there's obvious reasons for that. Some councils and RSLs have presented their data pre-COVID, so
sorry, Tony, we're losing you, sorry.
Okay, I'll turn my camera off. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so we're saying that some councils and RSLs have presented their data on pre-COVID information, but ours, as you say, is well up to date. The vast majority of our responses, the tenants are showing between 70 and 80% satisfaction. On the other end of the scale, the areas for improvement are as low as 9 to 15%. So generally, that's quite positive. So our corporate priorities is that everyone is supported to live in homes that meet their needs. The council works with people and communities to build independence and resilience. So we're sharing this report today with the Community Scrutiny, and it'll also be shared with our Tenants Federation. So obviously we need to respond to the feedback. We see all the results in the 2 reports, and they're considerably broken down by various criteria. So if you like your stats, you can analyse them to your heart's content. Okay, that's enough for me. I don't know whether Liz wants to go next, or I haven't seen her there. Is Liz there?
Not sure Liz is with us, is she?
I don't think so.
Jeff's there. So Jeff, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, Jeff. Just morning everybody, Bodar Pawb. Can you hear me all right? I've got my headset on. Sometimes it's a bit intermittent with Zoom. Yeah, I mean, I won't go on anymore. I do apologise for the 40 pages of stats that Tony's alluded to.
Jeff, do you want to turn your camera off where you are a bit intermittent now? Thanks, Jeff. You're worse now.
Is it? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, try again, Jeff, now, yeah.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's typical, isn't it? It's been fine all meeting until I speak. Yeah, just obviously Tony mentioned everything. Obviously, from our point of view, we were a little bit disappointed. You know, we made the decision to go ahead with the survey as it was due, whereas a lot of other local authorities left it till you know, presumably till COVID was going to end. But we thought it was quite interesting to sort of inform our plans for how people are feeling during COVID. And you know, we've had something like 50,000 telephone conversations with council tenants in the past year. But we really don't know how things are for them because we haven't been going into people's homes and seeing how they actually really are. You know, only in emergencies where we've had to. So obviously we are slightly disappointed still that we got lower satisfaction rates. You know, thankfully dissatisfaction hasn't gone up massively. There is a table on, I think it's page 214 in your report that shows how dissatisfaction's gone up. Also, the sort of neither or, no comment sort of section's gone up a little bit as well, which particularly because we weren't doing home visits and repairs, for example. So, and just finally from me, one of the key things was normally the real priorities of the home and the repairs service and the standard of the home. Obviously, the COVID impact came out quite significantly in the results because people were saying safety, feeling safe, their neighbourhood and their community were the really top priorities. So Welsh Government do see us as good practice because in the way we use STAR, because we do it every 2 years without fail, we're very much ensure that we do a you said we did and communicate that back regularly throughout the year to our tenants on what we've done about it, because we feel that's important. If people are going to take the time, it is a long survey. So we do think it's important to give that feedback back. We have got areas for improvement and we have got an action plan now. Part of the action plan is we're going to have to start the STAR survey again later this year, you know, December, January time, because Welsh Government, partly because I moaned so much about it, do want a reset of all data to be so all councils could be compared at the same time. I know that's not a big issue for us where we come within everybody else, but it is important for us just to see, you know, is that because our satisfaction last time was extremely high, and repairs and maintenance, for example, we were top in Wales for satisfaction. So it is important, obviously, but we're still more concerned with, you know, raising expectations of council tenants and trying to do the best that we can. So I'm happy to take any questions and talk through the action plan.
Okay, thank you, Tony, and thank you, Jeff. Thanks for the documents. It's really interesting. I'm sure it's been a difficult 14 months as well to do this survey and get this information. And you know, people are at home, and it's easy to pick the phone up, isn't it? Members, any question?
Thanks for the report.
I can't see. Yeah, Mervyn. Yeah, sorry.
I'll put my camera off and try again. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thanks, Jeff, and everybody for Housing for bringing this report forward. Can I just, while you're there, Jeff, just thank the team for the good work they've been doing on the houses in Llandudno to improve them, and in the Llandudno ward, I think more work to be done, but we're doing quite well. On this paper, and I can't say that I've seen it somewhere, but you mentioned, or somebody mentioned that it covers the RSL and the council houses. Do we get the results, the RSL results in this STAR report as well? And is there a likelihood of anything going out with, because there's Rent Smart Wales, are they likely to be doing anything in the private sector with a survey to find out quality of the houses? Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, can you hear me all right? I've still got the camera on. Yeah, I think the only reason the comparison's particularly useful, obviously our survey is only for our own tenants, our own council tenants, and it sets up priorities.
There's a camera off, Jeff, sorry. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Just to confirm that. Sorry. Can you hear me all right now?
Yes.
Just to confirm, it is just council tenants only, but every social landlord in Wales does have to do a similar survey. So it's always good for us just to see how our competitors, or whatever you want, rivals, RSLs, whatever you want to call them, how they're getting on as well. Just basically to see if we can pick out anyone we can learn from as well. And like I say, you know, we did have a lot of people come to us last time because our satisfaction was so high. I'm not sure about the private rented sector. You know, Welsh Government have asked all social landlords to do this every 2 years. But I'm not sure about the private rented sector because it's a lot more complex. I mean, there's many thousands of different landlords right down to people who own one property, isn't there?
Of course.
Thanks for that then, Jeff. But how do we go from the scrutiny committee? How do we go forward, Chair, in finding out from the RSLs, because we've got them in our area as well, to see and how they are shaping up, and how they rate? I mean, look, maybe they have come to me and I've missed them, but just for us to be able to see, to compare how they compare with our council houses, and have we got weaknesses with any of our RSLs or private landlords? Thank you.
Tony, have you got any information on that, or could you get it?
I'm sure we can get the information. Yeah.
Could you?
I haven't got it to hand.
Send it out as a brief to Rhiannon, and she'll share it.
Yeah, we'll do our best.
It's quite a big item because we do have quite a lot of RSLs within the county. How do we as councillors monitor how they're doing? So I don't know, maybe Graham Boss might know, or somebody might know how we would monitor the RSLs as well as the council houses. The council houses we've got, but how would we manage them? You know, I've got quite a few in my area. There's quite a few in the Chair's area. They're building new ones in Denbighshire and everything at the moment. Just how do we monitor them going forward? Thank you.
Jeff's got his hand up. Jeff, do you want to come back in on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, just to say, I mean, obviously, the levels of satisfaction is really a matter for the landlord and its tenants, really, through the process. But I agree with what Mervyn said. You know, we always keep an eye on what RSLs are doing in the area, because it's important to us to make sure that all tenants of social landlords get a similar service, you know, for the money that they're paying. And it's not different, but I think overall we're more concerned. We monitor them over things like lettings and how many lettings to homeless households, for example, and things like that. So, you know, I agree what you're saying, but we will get that benchmarking data though, so we will be able to see. So we know, for example, that, you know, Cartrefi Conway had similar satisfaction levels to us last time, so we've been able to speak to them to see why they've got such high satisfaction as well. But I can't share that once it's publicised.
Just come back on that, Jeff, for a minute, because probably I get more, and I know that the Chair does, probably get more complaints from residents, because the residents do come to us to moan about it. And I think that probably I get more complaints from the RSL Housing Association tenants than I do from council house tenants. And we then have to go back to the RSL companies to moan to them a little bit about it. And I'm just wondering whether we are monitoring them enough, because it's Welsh Government money that's going to doing what's doing. It's a lot of it is through our social, through the One Shop Wales for SAF, that places our residents in social housing through the RSLs as well as the council houses. So we have got an obligation, I think, as local members, to make sure that what the RSLs are doing are delivering what they're supposed to be doing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mervyn. Graham Bowes, you've got your hand up, and then we'll go to Graham Timms.
Yeah, no, just on that point, Chair, we have good relations with the RSLs across the council, of which there are a number now. You know, I don't know, must be 4, 5, 6 RSLs have got properties across the county. And as Jeff says, they do their own. They're obliged to do their own satisfaction survey. So I can see no reason why we can't ask them to provide information from their own satisfaction surveys. And also, as Jeff has said, there's a kind of broad benchmarking kind of exercise as well. So I see no reason why we can't pull something together for members. We could circulate that as some sort of paper outside of the meeting, and then if members looked at that and thought there's a particular issue, that could be a topic for a future scrutiny meeting, perhaps. Jeff, does that sound logical from your? I don't want to commit us to things, but it's not just yourself, of course, Angela and other people. There's quite a lot of good links with the RSLs. Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. And Welsh Government do publish the data, the benchmarking data for all social landlords, so we can share that. We can share that quite happily, and then we can do some more local analysis on where the differences may be locally.
We can do something and circulate that outside of the normal paper. You know, that Rian is very good at organising that sort of stuff. It might take us a little bit of time to get that together. That won't be in the next week or two. And then that paper might spark members thinking, oh, we want to bring this something back here to scrutiny for further investigation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mervyn, you've still got your hand up. Are you? No. Cheryl? Cheryl, can I just remind you, when you type something on the screen, it's in the public domain as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I've not had to do this before, but I'll do it just in case. One, I should declare an interest as an actual housing tenant, but the way Jeff described it, I don't think I took part in the survey. I, as a council tenant, I'm quite reasonably satisfied. My neighbours locally are reasonably satisfied, and I think that the maintenance service that we've got is outstanding. It always has been. You know, they've got a system there in place where the emergencies go first, and then 6 weeks later, if you put something in, it does. I mean, I waited for taps. I was quite happy my taps had gone. So they were very quick in sorting that out. And I've got to say they do a good job. But I will say when we have the upgrades for each different one, where they come up to Welsh Housing Standard, the subcontractors that we've used in the past have not done the job very well. And we've spent more money replacing products here than we should have done, really. So if we ever do the upgrades again, we really need to look closely at the contractors we use, subcontracted people we use. So I'd just like to put that in mind to you, Jeff, as well. That might be a satisfaction thing you might want to look at as well. Okay.
Could I have some advice on whether Cheryl needs a declaration of interest, please?
She'll need to fill a form in to declare an interest, which we'll send her. I think it's a personal interest in general in this one, but it just depends how much more information she wants to share with the committee.
Okay.
I did mention it to Kath as soon because I got the agenda late, so I didn't know what was on it because I had no access to anything.
I don't think there was more of a comment rather than a question, really. So anybody else within the group? I've got Graham Timms waving at me here. I keep missing him. Graham Timms, then, please.
Sorry.
Away from the screen.
Thanks. Thank Tony for the introduction to it, and never apologise for giving people those figures, Tony. That's exactly what we want. And one of the things that I was trying to look at and trying to get my head around was about the number of people that actually completed the survey compared to the number of surveys that were actually sent out, and it's just about 12%, and that actually returned it with the possibility of getting £100 voucher, which doesn't seem to encourage a lot of people, but it's certainly better than the National Lottery, if you can perhaps remind them of that next time. But the information after the housing report also is very, very useful, but we need to know who it is that's actually filling these forms in, because common sense might say to us that, well, someone who's got a bit of a complaint is going to fill one in, but someone who's quite happy won't bother. And if you look at a couple of the questions, one of the questions says, have you contacted DCC in the last 12 months? 88% said yes. So I think that's probably a high figure. Does 88% of the actual population of Denbighshire approach the council? And I think it's sort of indicating that the type of person that has contacted the council has filled the survey in, and it's reiterated, I suppose, by 73% of them had repairs carried out in the last 12 months. Do 73% of households have repairs carried out? And if that's the case, you're getting a response from people who've actually been involved with the council and not sort of getting a true picture. I think that the actual percentage of people that are very happy with the council is incredibly high, and I know you're not happy about the decrease, but I think that's really good. So you know, I think there's no reason to feel disappointed with that. But I just wonder about the survey, and if there is a way of having some sort of way of having a representative sample completing the survey rather than just sent to everybody, and then we've got results that we can actually use. And the last few bits, I mean, the dog fouling and that sort of thing, those questions at the end there, we can note, is that general across the population, or is it just in places where the council residents are and so on? So I think there's a lot more information than we could get from this if it was a representative sample of council residents rather than just those that fill it in. Yeah.
Thanks, Graham. Jeff, as you can see, Graham loves figures and percentages. Ex-teacher. Anyway, moving on. Jeff, there's a lot to answer there. You want to turn your camera off before we start? Thanks, Jeff.
Just don't want to. Yeah, I think, you know, I think it's right. I mean, one of the things we want to make sure we've got a good representative response that we can take some, you know, confidently take information from it. So we think 380, you know, over 10% is generally a good sample. It's every 2 years. It does seem to, we've done it 5 times now, and it does seem to come round really quickly. So I always think the tenants get a bit fatigued with filling these things in, but that's why it's really important that throughout the periods in between, we're always telling them what they said and what we did in response to the surveys, to make sure that we encourage people to fill more in, you know. And I think, you know, for me, it's really important. I think that, you know, with surveys, you often get, I only fill things in when I'm unhappy about something. You know, Melvin's right there, and I often do worry. But overall, like I say, the satisfaction is good. There's another 30 odd pages that we've got, which we haven't shared, which is positive comments and negative comments from people, which is really good. And then sometimes you can see that some people have got gripes, but then but we use that to improve and try and see where we're going wrong. You know, and the thing about you know, we do a prize draw as well. And one thing that made it all worthwhile was the week before Christmas, one of our housing officers knocked on the door of a tenant who'd won the £100 in the prize draw and didn't know anything about it. And she just absolutely burst into tears because she said she was struggling for money leading up to Christmas. And the £100 was just fantastic for her, you know, and just literally bawling her eyes out on the doorstep. So it was worth doing it for that one incident, if nothing else. But, you know, like I say, we're always trying to encourage more. That's why we do the breakdown of age and by area. Traditionally, more people, the older people tend to reply. This time we got more younger people, and we got a lot more online applicants as well, which is really good for us because it's much more efficient, saves us inputting all the data and mistakes and whatever. So yeah, it's always something we are working on and trying to encourage people as much as possible. I've worked in housing for 30 years, and I can never go to a residents meeting without somebody mentioning dog fouling. So sadly, you know, it is one of those issues in any community, unfortunately.
Graham, just going to come back.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what do you think about trying to get a representative sample that rather than just a voluntary thing? Though, and I'd like Tony's view as well on that, if that's okay.
Everyone says it is a representative sample.
You're not on mute.
Yeah, can I just mention while it's gone quiet for a second, Brian's been kicked out of the meeting and he's trying to get in Brian Blakely. Just to let you know.
Thanks. Jeff, do you want to come back on that, and then Tony can have a think about that?
Yeah, I think it is quite we were concerned that it's been towards older people in the past, but this time it's a lot better. I haven't got the data in front of me, but it was something like over half, I think, were people under 45, which is a much, because we want feedback from, in terms of representative, we want it to be right around the county, so we can see whether people feel differently in certain areas of the county, which we've done quite a lot of analysis of. You know, and also about age groups. You know, is people who live on family housing estates, so they feeding it back just as much as older people who live in, you know, our sheltered complexes and whatever. So we're actually fairly satisfied this time that, to use the term from that we actually got that sort of representative sample this time. Like I say, we were aiming for 25%, and that's why we did the quite a generous prize draw, but still, You know, like I say, we can't force people to do it, unfortunately. We have looked at phoning people out, but it was just impossible this year because it is quite a long survey. We do other surveys as well. We do lots of sort of dynamic surveys throughout the year, you know, post repairs and whatever. So we're just very conscious about not giving people survey fatigue, really. And can I just, whilst I'm here, can I just mention Cheryl's point about contractors on some of the big capital projects? I know Dave Laurie's here as well from property, but you know, we've had very, very high satisfaction with maintenance, repairs and maintenance, and that goes for our own staff, you know, the team in the office, our own DLO who are fantastic, and tenants really like the DLO and are comfortable with people they know. But also generally our capital programs have been really, you know, really positive as well. So, you know, a bit concerned about Cheryl's comment that we've had to go back and redo work. You know, I'd like to know more about that. So I'll have a chat with you about that. Like I say, and I think, you know, Mervyn's point that tenants in Llandudno, some of the feedback about repairs and maintenance has been about damp and condensation. And when you survey tenants in the winter, condensation is one of the big issues we've got because of the age of the stock. You know, it's 70, 80 years old. We've been sort of tinkering with improving energy efficiency and fuel poverty issues for a number of years, but it really feels like we've got an opportunity now with the decarbonisation agenda. You know, the stuff we've been doing, like Mervyn has supported us on brilliantly, to be fair, locally. You know, things like coal fires and oil fired heating, old electric heating, we have been replacing them with new air source heat pumps now, which are much more energy efficient, and people are really commenting on the low energy bills. The scheme we've been doing in Melidon through Dave Laurie's team, fitting solar panels and batteries and insulating properties, that's going to go a long way to reducing, because it is significant investment in a property, but it is going to go a long way to reducing a lot of the issues we have around condition of properties, which is that condensation and dampness issues that we get in the winter. Sorry to go on.
Thanks, Jeff. I know I'm going off tangent a little bit, but I'm the chair, so I'm allowed. Dave Laurie, would you like to come and defend what Jeff's just said as well, please?
I don't think I could ever defend what Jeff says. No, I mean, to be fair, I think Jeff gives a very good overview of the service. I think in terms of external contractors, particularly where we're talking about some of the bigger programs, it's something that I've heard, I wouldn't say a lot of, but it's certainly a sort of a common theme. I think some of the problem we have is that we've got to remember that we've been doing this now for a fair few years, and a lot of the work that was done in the early programs is due to be done again. So there is that sort of general deterioration. I mean, obviously, when we undertake external contracts with external contractors, there is monitoring. I can't pretend that we'll see everything. And there are instances where we have had our own guys go in to do repairs and they've uncovered some shoddy workmanship, and we have gone after the contractor. And I think that's probably what isn't seen as well. So it's not a case of us just walking away and thinking, oh, well, we've had a bad job done and that's that, we'll forget it. Where we are aware, we do chase the contractor, and where it has cost us money, we chase the contractor for that money. I think I'm more than happy to take the praise for our internal workforce, because I think they are very good. I would always advocate an internal workforce because they do have the interests of the service and the council at heart. They are employees of the council. So yeah, I'm really proud of the work they do. I'm really proud of the attitude they have, and thanks Cheryl for pointing that out. But yeah, it is something that we are conscious of, and I have been talking to a couple of the team managers here when we're looking at the upcoming projects that are going out, in terms of getting more presence on site during the works. And again, I think because obviously I can't remember, I've been in housing maybe 5 years now, but I think the works that were done in the early stages of getting WHQS compliance, you know, they were really big contracts compared to some of the ones that we're doing now. We are doing big contracts, but The council I think, did a really good job getting WHQS compliance a lot earlier than a lot of other councils. So it's taken that rounded view really, but it is something we're aware of and it is something we'll deal with. Sorry, that's the short answer.
Thank you, Jeff, David, and Cheryl. Thank you for bringing that up. Tony, did you want to come back on Graham's previous question?
Yeah,
before I went
okay.
to tangent?
We are getting a bit technical here. I mean, he has got a point that there is some bias in it. You know, as an A-level stats person, yes, this would be a question on it. But I'm happy to have a discussion with him on a private basis. I don't think there's any point there because this goes across the country, doesn't it? Various councils do very, very similar sort of work, and we are getting an effective response at 11%. But yes, it is. There's definitely some bias there, and I could criticise it, but there's no point. It's doing its job to a really good extent. So, but I'll have a private word with Graham, and we can go into it on a maths basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Siaradwr ola, sgan I, a wedyn dyma ni.
Last speaker I have, and then I'm going to draw it to an end, is Councillor Mary Glow Davis. You're on mute. I'm sorry, I thought I'd opened my mic. Could I declare an interest? I am attendant on, I think I missed that garages owned by the County Council. I have declared that interest over the past 25 years. I've been a councillor, so I don't think I'll need to write in to inform you of that. There are a few things that I'd like to raise, if you'd bear with me. TENANTS Housing Association, the Community Council have been trying to find out how many of the tenants are originally, as a family, from TENANTS. It was promised when the Welsh company, Cartre, or I think Adre they're called, when they asked for permission, that they would look firstly at local people or people with local connections, but trying to get figures is very difficult. And I'm not sure whether Jeff maybe could do something about that for us to get that information, and how many of our tenants were on the list have had houses there, because the local complaint is that they've failed to get houses, that local people have failed to get houses or homes. The second point, empty council houses. We've got an empty house nearby here. We as councillors, unfortunately, aren't told anything now about what is going on, whether there are new people moving in, will the repair and maintenance work be carried out, what will be carried out. We don't get any of that information. And the one that I have referred to in an inquiry, I haven't had any response at all. And the third point, I must praise Glyn Forster. He came to look at a job that needed doing here on Glasgow Road, and by today the work is they're starting on the work. So could I thank the department for that? How much work do we do in looking at tenants in terms of doing repair and maintenance or looking after their gardens, or does somebody have to complain first before people will contact the tenant to ask them to complete the work? And I notice on page 241, appendix 3, I think I'm in the right report. It refers to parking. 23 people say that this is important. Now, we've had difficulties in this row over years of parking on the main road, even though there is a parking nearby, but nobody seems to be willing to do anything. So I'm not sure whether Jeff would like to look at that problem too. Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me to inquire.
Jeff, there was a lot of questions there which were resolved around Mayrig's own ward. I've just picked up the gardens as a roundabout the whole Denbighshire. Could you liaise with Mary Mary Clyde Davis to answer some of his questions on a one-to-one, please, rather than debating it here? Just the gardens, really. What's the maintenance schedule on gardens, please?
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Tenants are responsible for their own garden maintenance, but we do have an inspection regime. So housing officers are responsible for going round and just having a word, hopefully a quiet word, with tenants who may be a little bit behind with their gardening. Like I say, it was difficult when there's campaigns like No Mow May, for example, where we're all encouraged not to mow our gardens for a month, you know, for the biodiversity element. So, and we're obviously doing lots of areas where we're not cutting grass now, we're managing wildflower areas, but you know, we do support tenants as well. Some people say they struggle to afford the equipment, so we do help tenants as much as we can. But yes, just to answer the question, we do keep an eye on it, and people, it's not about waiting for complaints to come in. You know, housing officers, I know they've been less out and about in the community, but we are encouraging them now to get out and make sure they walk their areas. And we're always happy to walk around with ward members around any estates to have a look at the general conditions in the area and whatever. Absolutely happy. And I just can't let it go about the ADRA. Just to let you know, ADRA have housed the people that they've housed have come off the Common Housing Register. So it's the register that we use and everybody uses. There is a local lettings policy in place in Trevenant, and which we've got ourselves for our own properties, which means that people had to have lived in that community council area prior to the allocation of a home, and ADRA did commit to using that. So I would always just make that point, that they did commit to adhering to the same level of local connection that we do as well. I'll come back about the other issues.
Thank you, Jeff. Right, I'm going to close the conversation there and go with Graham Timms for the summing up.
Yeah, good, Edith. Just to the recommendation on the paper there, is that the community scrutiny committee provide an input into the services proposed actions to respond to the survey's findings that will support the delivery of the council's housing and resilient communities corporate priorities. And there's another recommendation that we talked about during the debate, and that was that we ask for the other housing providers to share their surveys, and that they're circulated to the committee. And as Graham both said, then when we receive those and have a look at them, we can see if we want to take that any further. So that's the second recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Shall we take them both together and do a proposer, please? Peter Scott, seconder. Mervyn Parry, seconder. Everybody in agreement? Yeah. Anybody against? Can't see anybody. Tony, thank you very much. Jeff, it's always a pleasure to listen to your comments. I've learned No Mow May. That was new to me, but yeah, it's always a pleasure to have you here, Jeff. Keep the great work up. Thank you very much. We're going to stop now for a 15-minute break, so we'll see you all after then. Thank you very much. Diolch.
Are you still there, Chair?
Yes. Next agenda item is number 8, and Julian Thompson-Hill and Steve Gadd, and it's the lost my papers. All right. Yeah, it's the COVID-19 recovery theme, council building. Sorry, it's Julian Thompson-Hill and Steve Gadd. Apologies for that. Thank you. Julian, do you want to kick off?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'm sort of hearing myself, but I'm hoping I'm coming across okay to everybody else. We've also got, as well as Steve, we've also got Tom with us today, Tom Booty. I'm just going to give a bit of a very quick general introduction before handing over to the experts. This is a follow-up report to one we brought to the committee last September. And in fact, this was one of the first of the recovery themes, I think, that came before members at that stage. And I don't think any of us probably thought that we'd be here now in July now. And in point of fact, very little has actually moved forward from what we reported at that stage. Just to emphasize a couple of things of what this doesn't actually cover. So it doesn't cover anything to do with occupation of schools or our housing stock, which you're obviously talking about in the previous agenda item. And just for information purposes, for those who weren't aware of the change, the facilities management team has now moved over from Tony Ward's service to under Steve. So there's a good synergy and link up there in that. There were two documents attached to the main report, Chair. The first one is the current guidance document for usage of our properties, which has been developed by Tom. And the second one is a document which was developed with our colleagues in health and safety in terms of a template for some of the things that anybody looking to go back into offices should actually be considering. In terms of where we are, we're sort of working on currently on a three-tier approach. We're still in the phase where we're operating under the Welsh Government regs, whereby staff who can work from home should continue so to do. Staff are, in some cases, coming in to office buildings, whether that be out of necessity in order to actually be able to deliver work, or on a well-being needs basis. But that needs to be, that's being managed through their line managers and through the facilities management unit to ensure that all the regulations are currently being complied with. At some point, and who knows when that will be, which we're sort of calling the medium term, as the guidance changes, and there will be a gradual moving back to having more members of staff back in office buildings. We're essentially looking at doing that on the sort of rota basis. So one service might have some of their staff in on 2 days a week, and then another team would have 2 days a week, and so on, in order to manage the numbers actually in any one site at any one time, because I think it's probably unlikely that we'll suddenly go from everybody working at home to a total free-for-all. So we'll be in that medium-term period, we'd be looking to say have a maximum of 50% occupancy at any one time in the buildings. And then in the longer term, you'll be aware that we're, as a council, we've got the new ways of working programme, which is being overseen by Alan Smith's team, and which the finance service are contributing both from a finance point of view and obviously from Tom's assets point of view in the development of that. We've all seen probably that I don't want to, today isn't really a debate about the new ways of working, but just to suppose to set the context, I suppose it's unlikely that we will ever return exactly to the way we were pre-COVID in terms of office occupation. I think that's something general across the country and the world as a whole. So this will be the mechanism that will be used to probably come up with some form of hybrid utilization of buildings, and maybe buildings will be occupied more as for meetings rather than normal day-to-day transactional purposes. The other element we were asked to come back to report on, which is contained within section, I lost it now, section 4.5, was also just to give an update on the buildings actual infrastructure and the buildings maintenance. By and large, that's worked without too much interference due to COVID, because the buildings have not been occupied as such. There's obviously been a drop down in the amount of reactive maintenance that's needed to have been carried out, but that's given the team the opportunity to try and work on some of the larger schemes that were available. And in terms of the work that's been done by our design and construction team generally, that's there were some minor disruptions at the beginning of the pandemic period until working patterns were developed. But generally, again, although methods of working have had to change to meet circumstances, there hasn't been any significant disruptions to the program of works that have been ongoing. So I think that's probably, as an introduction, all I wanted to say. So if I hand over to Steve first of all.
Thanks, Julian. Oh, it's ploughed our power just about, isn't it? Yeah, thank you. I haven't actually got much else to say, Julian. You've done really, as usual, presented it really well. The only thing I'd probably add is that obviously this is a formal recovery theme. From memory, I think there were 7 recovery themes. So as Julian said, we originally reported in September, and you asked for an update. Obviously, I think we all hoped that this would be a more interesting report in a sense, because we'd be, we'd be back in and stuff, but everything happened over those months, didn't it? But what I would stress is that SLT and CET have reviewed the recovery themes and are trying to sort of move on to the next stage, really, from those original themes. Now, the building one was very much a reactive one. It was very much, can we keep our buildings, maintenance going? Can we keep them open? Can we keep track of ones that are closed? Can we respond to requests from the NHS, etc., for help with facilities when required, such as the car parks and the testing unit, etc. Now that phase is really finished, and that is why I've just mentioned the New Ways of Working project in this report. But just to stress, that is a whole separate programme. And obviously Alan's leading that programme with 4 heads of service leading separate work groups. So I don't really want to go into the New Ways of Working. You need a whole new report for the New Ways of Working. But I did want to highlight that because that's the sort of successor project to this bit, if you like. But it has input from HR and everyone else, and it's a lot bigger project that obviously I'm sure Scrutinies will be interested in future months as we get to various decision points in that project. But just to flag that, really.
Thank you, Julian, and thank you, Steve. Can I open it up to members, please? Any questions within the group? I've got one from the outside the group. Graham Timms has put his hand up.
No. Just one of the questions is not really for an answer, it's just highlighting an issue, really. But the other question is about financially, has it been cheaper or more expensive to have people working from home than in the office? In other words, the savings that you make on heating, maybe, and that sort of thing. There are obviously different expenses for people working at home. Just how do the finances stack up? And the question which you've indicated already, Steve, that there's a much bigger project for the future ways of working. Just the end of paragraph 4.4 that indicates that in the future, properties will have to be looked at. And just to urge everybody, really, that as soon as any information about future buildings is available, that it's shared with ordinary councillors like me, because it is going to have an enormous effect on communities and so on. So as soon as we can be involved in that, we'd be grateful. Yeah.
Chair,
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, so from the finance perspective, obviously, that there is a whole finance work stream on the New Ways of Working project. Just historically, last year, there were underspends due to the way we were working. Buildings weren't being heated. We had NNDR rebates because if you're a closed building, then you have certain reductions in your NNDR bill. So schools, for example, benefited from that. There's the obvious ones of just less travel. So people are claiming less travel. So people aren't going. So for example, I used to go down to Mid Wales regularly for national Section 151 meetings. I haven't been and probably never will ever again for those particular meetings. You know, there's some good things, but just general travel round, certainly travel out of county hasn't happened, or only on the specific, you know, any specific projects. I can't really think of any, but so a lot of travel has gone down. Some other things, printing, interestingly, big savings on printing. Now, I mean, I know I work from, you might say, well, people are printing from home. I work from home. I have a printer down there. I haven't used my printer for 14 months or however long it is now. I did used to print stuff off reports, spreadsheets, and then look back on the screen, tick things off, all that sort of stuff. I just don't work like that anymore, and I wouldn't if I went back to the office. So I think it's a complicated picture going forward. There will be increases in costs. So for example, IT investment will need to be increased. There's probably be costs around making sure that everyone's if they are working from home, that they have all the facilities that they need, desks, etc., health and safety, things like that. There'll be additional, certainly printing, that'll go back up to some extent, but what that level will be, we don't know. So yeah, it's very difficult to judge, but certainly last financial year there was a reduction in costs, which you saw as part of the outturn report. That was part of the reason for the underspend, and certainly in schools they were shut and they saw a reduction in those direct costs. Sorry, and the second question was around the office. I'll probably ask Tom to comment on that as well. But don't forget that if the facility, the property aspect is not driving any change, that the New Ways of Working project is not going to force anyone to work from home. It will enable people who want that mix, now they've experienced it, to do that going forwards. That will inevitably lead to more empty offices, less occupancy in offices, and we have to respond to that. And some of that will be really positive things, bringing partner organizations into buildings, using offices in a different way, for example, perhaps cutting the number of desks, having more meeting rooms to allow that more sort of free-flowing, you come to work to discuss things with other people rather than coming to work to sit at a computer and just type. You can do that at home. So there'll be a different, it's understanding, and we are at the very early stages of this, of understanding how our offices will change. I think that's where we're at the moment. But Tom, do you want to just come in on that office accommodation point?
Yeah, well, really just to reiterate what you've just said, Steve, that we will begin to look at our office accommodation. I think inevitably, if people are working from home more, so it would be a blended, half the week at home, half the week in the office, we will have a reduced need for office spaces. But I wouldn't immediately then go to the conclusion that means we're going to get rid of offices, because as Steve has outlined, we're looking at other options about how we can utilize the buildings in different ways, how we can share with partners, doing a bit of work with partners, because the Welsh Government are very keen on these remote working hubs where private sector and third sector organisations can come in rather than them commuting to their place of work. So there might be options for that within our buildings. So we are looking at all different options, but I suppose longer term, we might still decide that we've got too much office accommodation, and we might be considering how we can reduce the office portfolio. But I would stress we haven't made any decisions on that at the moment, and absolutely acknowledge Councillor Tims's point that we would always consult and talk with members about any proposals of that kind.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for that. And the next speaker is question. Somebody's put the hand down.
Peter
Scott.
Hand up, wasn't it? Yeah.
Peter Scott. You're on mute. Sorry, Peter. That's why I couldn't hear you. You're on, Peter, you're on mute.
Yeah, struggling with the iPad, Chair. I'm very sorry. I took my hand down because Tom's just answered my question. It was an addendum to Graham, you know, would there be closing offices and losing offices, but he's answered that question. Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry.
Councillor Irving Paddy then, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering whether we can, from this paper, offer some assistance to, I don't know whether town councils need it, but community councils, as we have, if I took Llandyrnog, we've got buildings as in the Cocoa Rooms in Llandyrnog that we use as our meetings, and which is closed at the moment. Are we able to offer some assistance to town and community councils on what they should do with their buildings that they're responsible for? Now, you might say that they're responsible for it, but if they get to a stage where they're not capable of looking after them financially, then they possibly eventually could then become county problems. So I'm just wondering if we've got some guidance and help what we can give to town and community councils on buildings that they have to maintain through their precept, yeah, I'll leave it like that. Maybe you can answer that one.
Someone for you, Tom, or Tom Booty?
Yeah, thank you. We don't have any standard guidance at the moment for town and community councils. We do get inquiries sometimes, and we do try and assist where we can, but we do have limited resources to do that. You know, we have our own portfolio to manage. We have limited resources, but we do try and support where we can.
Thank him in there as well.
In what way, Tom? Could I ask how you would support? Because you know there is a risk. There is a risk if the community council. There is a risk to the county if the community councils can't deliver what they're supposed to do with these buildings. Because if they can't deliver it, eventually that risk could land up back on the county. If it's so, I'm just wondering, do we maybe share information with them because you know they don't have an awful lot of information or availability of information to help them with this. And I'm just thinking that it's a one-click email response from somebody there to all town and community councils to give them some guidance or where they could ask for help if they needed it. Thank you.
Where we have offered guidance in terms of, it's been quite general, to be fair. I mean, at the early stages of the pandemic, some community and town councils were asking us about guidelines, and what we were able to do was share the guidelines that have been appended to this report, to sort of outline, well, this is what we are doing in terms of our office buildings and how we deal with meetings and the like. With regard to, you know, advising on specifically on property issues and property maintenance and the like, we are not currently resourced to support town and community councils to do that in relation to their individual properties. As you say, they are their properties, they're their responsibilities. And if we were to look at offering a more comprehensive service to town and community councils in relation to property management, and I understand, you know, that some community councils do have issues with it and they're not very well resourced, but we would need to consider how we would resource that additional support we'd be providing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Should I turn this the Mary Lloyd Davis?
The next speaker is Councillor Mary Lloyd Davis. Thank you again, Chair. Just two brief questions this time, I think. Thank you for the report, very interesting. But will there be a similar report for councillors? We're hoping to come back to the chamber one day in the future, in the near future. So I'm looking forward to receiving a report telling us how to work and how to move forward and work from home, obviously. The Treasurer has mentioned costs and savings. Will there be any costs in terms of the way councillors have had to copy work because they're home working on their own equipment?
Meirg. Ma' rei di bod I fewn.
Thank you. Some of us have been coming in from the start in the chamber, and I've quite enjoyed it, to be honest, holding meetings with Graham here and the team. Yes, I have to. Who's going to answer that one, please?
Chair, if I start off, and I'm sure either Tom or Steve will probably want to come in. In terms of members, there is a member working group which is looking at sort of the in parallel to the new ways of working, which is obviously for staff only. Clearly, it's they're going to need to have some synergies in that, because you can't have one that's doing something diametrically opposed to what's being done on the other. So I think the likelihood is, and I don't think it's come to any conclusions yet, I don't sit on it, so I haven't seen the work that they've been doing. But I would imagine in much the same way that we will probably have some sort of hybrid way of functioning for staff, that we will have some hybrid way of members working in relation to the fact that we probably will have some meetings which will be done in person, so to speak. Some will be done remotely, and some will be done as a hybrid, where we'll have some members in the chamber and some signing in as we're doing at the moment. So I think that's where we are. There will be a report obviously coming back from that group when it's completed its work, and I'm assuming that, and the intention it would be to report back obviously this side of the election, because it would make sense then that anybody considering standing for election next year would know on what basis they're potentially putting their names forward.
Thanks, Julian. Julian, I've got Graham Bowes who's put his hand up. Graham, can you contribute to this before?
Yeah, that was the. Thank you, Chair. Just to echo what Councillor Julian Thompson-Hill has said, there is a working group of members, and actually, I think it's very much for members to decide in what direction they want to go in the kind of longer term around how you want to conduct your meetings in the future, given this forced experiment of distance working, and whether you like it or not, or whether you want to go back to what you had pre-COVID, or as Julian has said, some sort of hybrid, probably in between those two things for a whole host of reasons. So while the synergies with the officer work of new ways of working, the member demands are probably quite different. And again, I echo what Julian said, they need to chime and work together, but they're probably in some ways they're quite different as well. And I think its members need to come to their own conclusions around, once we're out of this COVID stuff, and we're back to an element of normality, are the benefits in the way that you've been working, or is it much better as it was before COVID, or something in between? But it is for members, I think, to come to those conclusions. Officers will help, officers will support, and officers will implement whatever views are that members come to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. There's 3 speakers with their hands up. If you don't.
Sorry, Merrick had the second question, and for the life of me, I hadn't written it down, so I couldn't remember what it was.
Julian, I think it was around the costs.
Yeah.
Of councillors. I think obviously there's 2 bits there, isn't there? That there is a cost. There's a cost for investment in IT, etc. I think maybe perhaps you're referring to some costs that you were incurring as councillors, additional to what you'd normally incur. Obviously, members' expenses are quite defined, but obviously you can claim expenses. I would probably seek advice from Steve Price or Gary on what's actually claimable or not. I'm not 100% sure of what the rules are, but if it's a legitimate expense, that would be my view. But as far as the actual putting in place things, there is going to be a cost going forward, and this is one of the costs, and for staff. But so, for example, if members decided that they want to carry on and have a mixed meetings, well, at the moment that can only happen in the chamber. So, for example, mags, etc., it would be really difficult. We haven't currently worked out how best that could be delivered, and it's likely that that would probably need some investment. And that's why the New Ways of Working project needs to take both things. And we're not trying to make savings. There may be some savings that come out of it, but we also recognise that there's going to be needing investment in this as well. So it's a complicated thing to work out what the net position would be at the end, and we probably never will, because it's a very long-term project and there'll be ongoing investment in this area.
Thank you, Steve. Eric, do you have this one?
Are you happy with it? I'd just like to ask one other question in response to my answers. Thank you for telling me that there are a group of people looking into what councillors will be doing in future. But are you going to send out a questionnaire to the councillors to ask for their views on different aspects that you would like answers to?
That was actually done. I remember I completed one. It was done several months ago, I think, before, in order to inform the work of the member group.
And just to add to that, there was a big survey carried out with staff for how they wanted to do probably the same sort of time. It was around just before Christmas time for the staff one, and it was really clear. There was a small proportion of people who wanted to come back 5 days a week. There was a small proportion of people who just wanted to work from home forever. Most people wanted that 2 to 3 days sort of mix for staff, and that's what's fed in and informed the decision to actually, we don't need to do anything draconian here. We don't need to force people or ask people to work from home. People want to work from home, and we just need to facilitate that and reflect that in what service we provide.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer, please. Everybody happy? All the members are happy? If we are, can we go to the recommendation? Can I hand over to Graham Timms, please? Just a test. Just give us a minute. Right, it's Graham. Can I hand over to you, Rich?
Thank you for that introduction, Chair. But we should have perhaps voted on this at the start, because the recommendation that's before us is for the contents of the report to be discussed, and that's it. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Can I have a proposer? Well, that is correct. Yeah, thank you. And a seconder. Cheryl, will you second it? Yes, yes, Cheryl. Thank you. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Steve and Tom, for that report. And great. Thank you. So swiftly moving on to agenda number 9. We'll hand over to Rhiannon if she's ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this is your usual work programme. In Appendix 1 on page 289, you'll see the work programme as it stands at the moment. You'll see from that you have a special meeting on Monday, the 26th of July at 10 o'clock to consider the report that will come from the working group that's been looking at the Gypsy and travel accommodation assessment. That's the only item that will be on that agenda. That's just a special meeting for that. Your next normal meeting will be on the 9th of September. And at the moment, there's one item on the agenda, but that could change because the chairs group is meeting this afternoon. That item there is to do with one matter that's been dealt with this morning, really, or that's been mentioned in the discussion anyway, regarding flood management responsibilities in relation to the Rill Cut and Prestatyn Gutter. And you'll see from that there will be representatives from NRW to be invited to the meeting to discuss that. So that'll be a good opportunity to discuss the work they've been doing on modelling there. As I said, the chairs and vice groups chair meeting is this afternoon, so it is possible that another item might be included on the work programme for that next meeting. If members have got any topic that they'd like to raise and want the chairs and vice chairs group to discuss, to put on work programmes in the future, if you could fill in the form in Appendix 2 and submit it to me, please. And in Appendix 3, you'll see the Cabinet's forward work programme, and Appendix 4, the latest on your recommendations from the last meeting. Today, too, you've asked for a for information report regarding the benchmarking and how happy the tenants of the RSLs and private landlords are with their houses and the service they're getting. So we'll get that report out to you by the next meeting.
Sorry, Chair, I'm just looking for my hand. Just want a slight correction there, Rhian, far from it for me to correct you. I'm not sure we can do it for private landlords. I think the agreement was RSLs.
Okay, fine.
I think it wasn't to do with private landlords. That would just be too difficult and too complex. I think it was. I think the discussion was around RSLs. Thank you.
Okay, fine. No problem. Thanks.
Diolch, Rhian. Diolch am...
Thank you, Rhian, for that.
Great, iawn. Rhaid ni symud ymlaen I rhif 10.
Right, we'll move on to our agenda item number 10, feedback from committee representatives.
About the task and finishing group on the flooding this morning. That's ongoing, and even though it's really slow, I think what we are getting somewhere. Quite confident what we will get. So I don't know where, but we are getting somewhere. I think some of the other members on the team will agree. Any other feedback off anybody?
Chair, sorry, go on.
No, go on, please.
It's just to say again, similar to what you say, the task and finish group for the GTAA is getting along very well. I think we've got another meeting on Monday. We've had quite a, I think this will be number 4 or 5, 6 or 7 before we come to you on that special meeting. But that is progressing very well and very interesting. That should be a good meeting when we get it to community scrutiny. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else like to contribute? No. Great, thank you very much. So on that note, can I just thank everybody for joining the meeting today. Rhian, Steve, Kath, I'm useless with names as everybody knows, and our translator over there, and the Vice Chair for being put back in post for another 12 months along with me. And Cheryl, do you want to you've put your hand up, Cheryl? Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was asked to fill a form in, but I've had to kind of declare what I was saying via my own personal email because I've got no access to the server yet. So just to let you know, I haven't filled the form in because I can't.
Declaration of interest form.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have emailed what is the best way I can through my personal email to Rhian and to Kath, and highlighted what I was going to say, that I declared a personal interest in item 7. That's the only way I can do it.
Thank you. I'm sure I'll contribute back to you. Right, end the meeting. Thank you ever so much. Diolch yn fawr iawn i bawb. Diolch.
Bye. Thank you.